All right, this is going to be the letters page. Legion Outpost for Legion of Superheroes, number 50, 1988. I guess these are all answered by Paul Levitz.
Our first letter is from Anthony Gallagher from Melbourne, Australia. Dear Paul, Garth, Irma, and Rock, happy 30th anniversary. The future is now 30 years old and thriving, and the Legion has never been better. In preparation for this monumental event, my entire, almost complete Legion collection has been reread, just so I'm in shape for the next 30 years. And look how far we've come in these 3 decades of Legion lore. 37 Legionnaires, hundreds of supporting characters and villains, and an entire universe explored. Somewhere in all that creative maelstrom lies the perennial charm of the Legion that we all love. So keep up the good work, and the Legion's future is assured. Anyway, on to number 45. I like the new Luck Lords. They have the power, charisma, and motivation to be good Legion villains, as long as they are not overexposed. The machinations over the years with the Lightning Lad, plausibility explain his bad luck streak, and his karmic role in the formation of the Legion was made the 30th century what it is now. While all the flashbacks with Garth were nice, I would rather have seen all the Legion more. I know the 3 founding members are an intrinsic part of the Legion, but it has grown with and without them until now, when they should stay in the background more. Don't get me wrong, I still love the characters dearly, but let the new members share the spotlight in future anniversary tales. Happy 30th anniversary and long live the Legion.
He reread his whole Legion collection in anticipation of issue number 45. Have you ever done anything like that? Where it's like, oh, I know there's going to be a new, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe a Legion number 1 that picks up right where the last issue left off. Maybe you would read a bunch of them. But like issue 45, I'm going to read all those adventure comics and all those Superboys in anticipation of what turned out to be Legion 45. What I would be real disappointed if I had invested all that time and it's this Luck Lords thing.
Well, as you know, I did a couple years ago spent about 6 months reading almost the entirety of the Legion up till 1994, but that was not in anticipation of the new one, even though it was coming out. I had no intention of reading it.
Yeah, like the new Brian Bendis Legion's coming
Right,
out. I'm gonna
right.
read every issue to get prepped and get psyched about it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, brother.
I guess we should say that this Legion 45 is an anniversary issue celebrating the 30th anniversary
That's correct.
of the Legion of Superheroes. They debuted in 1958, and now it's 1988. Or this is letters page from issue 50, which is a milestone issue just because it's the 50th. Mm-hmm. 5 issues prior to that was a 30th anniversary of the team, so they had another double-sized issue. It's a spotlight issue on Lightning Lad. These guys, the Luck Lords, are, I guess, trying to kill him. They have this storyline where Lightning Lord comes out of the woodwork, tells all the backstory of Lightning Lad.
Drawn by various noted Legion artists to sort of commemorate the anniversary. So you get like Kurt Swan and Mike Grell and the other guys.
Giffen and Cockrum, yeah. Nothing really happens. It just tells you the story of Lightning Lad. I was thinking that he might be getting killed. Like they might be kind of teasing that they're going to get rid of Lightning Lad with these Luck Lords guys, or they're going to do something with Lightning Lord. And I don't think they do. They just kind of fight like always, and that's it.
Right.
Big celebration. Congratulations. And this guy read every issue of Legion up to that to prepare. I would be bummed.
Indeed.
But this is this first paragraph of his letter is like Paul Levitz could have written a better celebration of the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy doesn't want to see so much of the Legion founders.
Right.
And I don't think in this series they haven't really been that big of a presence. Like they had all quit before. Well, two of them had quit before this, and Cosmic Boy had his own miniseries, but he hasn't really been on the team.
Yeah, it was right around the time of either the end of the last series or the beginning of this one that basically they had all sort of left the book. So this guy, I think, is kind of an anomaly. I think a lot of more of the letters are complaining that they aren't there.
Yeah. Jim Kelly, Freeport, New York. Dear Paul, thanks for Unlucky Streak. That's the title of issue 45. I see that DC is publicizing the Legion's 30th anniversary, and LSH 45 was a wonderful gift to all its readers and fans. The return of Lightning Lord was a treat by itself, but the redefinition and representation of the Luck Lords was brilliant. These three beings deserve a return engagement. They were a welcome and unexpected change from the super scientific world in which the Legion resides. The art was also a treat. Continued success in the next 30 years. Yeah, these Luck Lords are they're kind of a concept from the Silver Age. I think they were just villains. And now the new Luck Lords are, I don't know, they kind of depict them as they're alien looking, but I don't know if they're supposed to be actual aliens or if they're actually supposed to be some kind of magical beings that control the fate of people in the universe.
Honestly, I'm not sure what these readers see in those characters. They kind of look like bad Star Trek villains or Sid and Marty Krofft guys,
And don't they all like speak in unison or something? And
or finish each other's sentences. Yeah, could have been executed a little better, I think. Moving on, our next letter is from James Rickliff. Dear Paul, for being a 30th anniversary issue, as a much heralded one at that, 45 was a big disappointment to me. Oh, it was a good spotlight issue on Lightning Lad, but I wanted and expected something special. As it was, what exciting developments or changes in the Legion did we get? Alas, none. And what a pity, since there are so many logical developments in Legion lore that you could have used this issue to examine and portray. What developments are those, you may ask? Here are a few of the possibilities that sprang to my mind. 1. The boy/girl lad names currently employed in the Legion are becoming increasingly inappropriate. I agree. For example, Brawlians consider people adults at age 14, yet Cosmic Boy is more than twice that age. The story about the coming of age of the Legion and the many Legionnaires is long overdue. 2. You've introduced several new heroes over the years, but how long has it been since we've seen a major new villain? Starfinger is the closest you've come, but even he's wearing a hand-me-down name.
Oh, he sucks too.
Yeah.
Starfinger 2 or whatever. Terrible.
Not Levitz's or The Rock's best work. Isn't he wearing like just a big star, a big flat star? Kind of. He looks like he's wearing a star costume, like a mascot would wear.
Yeah, kind of a star costume and a fish bowl, I think, helmet.
3. There has been very little of the history of the UP, the United Planets, right?
Yep.
Revealed so far in these pages. The beginnings of a plug for this glaring hole in the Legion mythos would have been quite a welcome surprise. 4. Didn't the infamous adult Legion story say that Colossal Boy would lose his power due to an injury? It looks like he may be leading up to this development, but whether you are or not, this is just the type of big change to a Legionnaire's life that an anniversary issue would have been perfect for. 5. The only notable change to the Legion itself that I can recall was when they dropped the rule excluding married members. Will they someday drop their rule excluding the duplication of powers? Will they modify their code against killing?
I hope they do.
The other question is, I've never quite got the duplication thing, because how many people have Superman's powers or Superboy's powers? You got Superboy, Supergirl, Mon-El, Andromeda, if she counts, Ultra Boy. I mean, he can only use one at a time, but there's still all powers another character has. I think they're snobs, and that's just what they say when some dork comes and wants to join their club, their clique.
Like dork Superboy shows up and they're like, you're too much of a dork. We already got a
Super hearing. Hey, Monel, do you have super hearing? Sorry, you can't join. 6. Although there is an incredible wealth of Legion stories from the past, there are probably still more stories untold. One of the most notable that springs to mind is the untold tale of the Legion's first encounter with Mordru.
Wait a minute. They told that story, didn't they? It's just told in a flashback in the first appearance of Mordru.
Oh my god, I can't remember.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. That doesn't seem likely,
Well, I
but
remember that first appearance of Mordru.
we just covered that, didn't we?
Yeah, Monel is telling Shadowlass about Mordru, and he tells her the whole story, and it begins with Monel and Superboy showing up back at headquarters, having gotten their asses whooped, I guess, by Mordru, but they tell the story, don't they?
All we needed to know.
Yeah, it's not a comic story; it's just kind of
Right,
a flashback. But I don't know.
right. 7. There's a rumor that Keith Giffen is returning to work on the Legion. I've never liked Keith's art style, but as a co-plotter, his participation of this title is eagerly awaited and would have made number 45 a very special one. I guess what really disappointed me was that I've expected so much more, because I've loved and followed the Legion for about 25 years now, and I expected more because I know you can do much better. Look at number 300, wherein you put to rest the tyranny of the adult Legion story of almost 20 years earlier. Look at the first Legion annual, where you introduced the Science Police liaison officer to the Legion and a new Legionnaire. Now, those were special issues, and it was a story of their caliber that I was looking forward to. Well, you've got 5 years now to plan for the Legion's 35th anniversary issue. I'm crossing my fingers.
I mean, he's right. You cannot hold up issue 45 against 300 or the
Right.
first Legion annual. That first Legion annual, that's tops. That's like this issue 50. It's not even as good as that first Legion annual.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird that they put this double size issue just a few um months later. Like, was this story originally intended to be the 35th anniversary issue and Giffen wasn't done yet?
Oh, was 50 going to be the 30th anniversary issue? I don't know. I feel like they must have scheduled Giffen to come back on 50.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that they lined up those artists to work on 45, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, it's the 30th anniversary. We're gonna do a double size issue.
Mm-hmm.
Call up, Swan and Schaffenberger and Grell and Cockrum and Giffen. Like Giffen will
Mm-hmm.
do it for sure. He's been working on the series already for years, and get him on the thing. And all right, now Paul, write the comic. And this is what he had to work with. That's probably how it shaped up. I don't know. In that way, I kind of get it. Like it's still a deadline grind kind of thing, even though it's the 30th anniversary. But it stinks. It's a bust unless you just thrive on the nostalgia of those old artists. And a lot of people do. I don't. A lot of people do. I like those guys. They did a good job on this issue, pretty much. But yeah, it really was lacking, and definitely was nowhere near these ones that James Rickleff calls off.
Well, when they were planning this out, I mean, this is the same year, right? Like, presumably, they could have gotten all those artists to do a jam of this issue. Now, that would have been inferior, obviously, but they chose not to do it that way. Maybe Giffen insisted on doing this story by himself.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of works to get like a gang of artists to do one of these flashback things where each guy
Yeah,
does a section. That kind of makes sense.
from their period and their style.
Right, yeah. So that makes sense to me. Yeah, I would not have wanted issue 50 to be drawn
Right,
by like part of it to be drawn by Swan and all the like
right.
no way that would have been that would have been bad
No,
too.
it would have definitely been inferior.
Yeah. And then he's like, you got 5 years now to plan for the 35th anniversary. So that would have been in 1980 or 1993.
Well, yeah, it's funny how it works out because I think a couple things he says, he mentions like 5 years, and then we're on the verge of 5 years later where things do get changed quite a bit. And the 35th anniversary, I think, is right when it ends.
Oh, really? That could be.
Or it's pretty darn close. It might be the 36th. Was 0 Hour 94? I thought it was 94. Maybe
I
it's.
think it is 94.
I bet he was really excited about that anniversary where they ended the continuity that he'd been reading for over 20 years.
Right. Well, yeah, for over, it would have been 30 years at that time, right?
Right, right.
Okay, so 54, issue 54 of 5 years later is it's got a die cut cover, silver foil.
That's the one?
I think so. I think that is what you would consider the 35th anniversary, where they give up being their legionnaire to look and they go on the run.
Mm-hmm.
It's so pitiful and terrible. Sorry, James. James Rickleff is from Studio City. That's real close to where I live. I should go to his address and see what his house looks like someday.
Yeah.
Paul Levitz responds, "Sorry you were so disappointed, James, but we felt that reaffirmation was in itself an event as much as change, which has always been an important part of the Legion. We agree. As for the specific changes you mentioned, one, we get lots of letters saying it's time for getting rid of the boy, lad, lass. We get lots of letters saying it's time for this and a handful opposed, but we just haven't been able to convince ourselves to cross the Rubicon yet."
Which they're just about to do. We're months away from that happening.
Yeah, but not. I mean, they give up code names altogether, right? It's not really done as a way to address the fact that they're not boys and girls anymore, right?
I feel like it kind of is. I mean, it isn't like we're not kids anymore. We can't go by those names anymore. There's nothing like that. But I think Giffen wanted to address that and get past that because I think he thought it was getting corny.
But I think, I don't know, like the kind of story that Giffen is telling in the 5 years later,
Mm-hmm.
where they're not superheroes anymore. There's no
Mm-hmm.
Legion anymore. They're all just going by their like actual regular names and not
Right.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I like all their original names a lot, but I also think it's pretty corny that if the guy who wrote this letter is right, then Cosmic Boy's 28 years old. And not only is he 28, like he points out, he's an adult at 14.
Mm-hmm.
So he's really been stretching that out. I mean, and we're to the point where Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl have a couple of kids, and they're still calling themselves Lad and Girl. It's getting kind of silly.
Yeah. Number 2, regarding the introduction of new villains, Paul says, frankly, we thought the Luck Lords qualified. They're even more removed from their original version than Starfinger, and we suspect they have more long-run potential, though we have no plans to explore them further for a while. Oh.
Do you think it's just on the rock?
What, that they're so lame? What do you mean?
With both, that's the common denominator there. With their designs really stand out bad, both cases.
Oh no, the storylines are really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember reading that Starfinger thing not long ago, and it's just dragged on, and he kind of sets him up as like this big gangster out in the universe, but then it just peters out, and there's some like weird I don't know, like Levitt seems like he gets sidelined and does something else, and then he has to bring back the Starfinger storyline again. And I'm just like, I'm tired of this. It's not going anywhere. He's boring. Yeah, he looks a little silly, but I don't know. Like, they all look silly. I can get over that, I think.
Right.
Just wasn't a good storyline. And then the Luck Lords too. Like, regardless of the way LaRock designed them, it wasn't a good comic. The Luck Lords don't really do anything. They're just like, they do their chanting or whatever they do,
I will say I've seen like screen grabs of the animated Legion series from, what was that, like 10 years ago? And I guess Starfinger was in it, that version of Starfinger, or maybe kind of an amalgamation. So I think maybe he had like the different beams coming out of each of his fingers. But they managed to like make it look kind of cool. Like his face is completely, his head's completely black, and it has like Kirby crackle all around it inside the bowl. It looked decent. Like someone figured out a way to kind of make it work.
Yeah, I remember that too. I think that's maybe the first episode of the show, or I watched a couple of them. It was on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon a while back, and I watched a couple of them. Yeah, like I think the design of Starfinger, the he inside his fishbowl, it just seems like it's all surprint,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like a man's head but blacked out, and there's like it's in plasma or something, and big Kirby
Right.
crackle bubbles in there.
Mm-hmm.
That looks kind of cool. The thing with the big old shoulders and he looks like a star, that's
Yeah.
a little bit weirder.
Mm-hmm.
But then the characterization, I think, on the cartoon was not that he was a super criminal
Mm-hmm.
underworld leader. He's just like I think it's actually like a comedic characterization,
Okay.
and he's just a bad guy. So that makes it a little more fun and more palatable
Right.
than looking at this clown with his silly star-shaped suit and
Right.
having people be scared of him and take him seriously.
I mean, the original wasn't all that exciting looking either. He looked like a cross between like the Michelin Man and Black Manta or something. But I
Yeah,
always thought the like having a different kind of beam or power coming out of each finger was kind of a fun idea for a
yeah,
kids comic, you know. And I don't even think the newer one had that. They were trying to be more like Goodfellas or something.
yeah.
Like
Like
he's
you,
like a future mafia guy or something.
right? He was supposed to have his fingers in all the rackets all around the universe or
Yeah.
something. Number three, regarding the history of the United Planets, Paul says we don't think this story can be told properly in the pages of the Legion, since virtually all of it takes place before any of them, except Mon-El, were alive. Maybe as a graphic novel or in some other special format someday.
What is that in response to?
James Rickliffe wants more.
Oh, the history.
Yeah, he says a possibility versus instead of the Luck Lord's crapola would be to maybe to approach the history of the United Planets or the workings of it, I guess.
Is that kind of part of Invasion, or does what happened in Invasion sort of plant the seeds for that, or?
Kind of. I mean, they don't. It's about how there's all these humanoid people on all these different planets with different powers.
Right.
It doesn't really talk about how they united to form a United Planets.
Right.
They did eventually start covering that in the Brian Michael Bendis stuff.
Which version?
The
Which
the
Legion?
the most recent Legion, but actually
Okay.
in Superman, I think is where it was when Bendis was writing
Right.
Superman. He kind of has some kind of roots
Right.
of United Planets, but
Right.
he had it happening in the contemporary DC universe, which I don't think really makes any sense, but neither here nor there.
It seems to me like it makes more sense to address it in the present than in the future, but I guess really it's in the middle, right? 500 years,
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe in a Booster Gold
Oh,
series
right,
or
because
something.
he's in the middle. Yeah. Get
Well,
on that, Dan Jurgens.
yeah. Actually, I guess Booster Gold was in the 20th century too, but Booster Gold's time was when they should
Right.
start talking about the United Planets.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 4, which was about Colossal Boy losing his power, according to the Adult Legion story. Paul says, agreed in principle, though we're not saying what's in store for Colossal Boy.
Right, because he would, right around this time, he was badly injured by Starfinger. Like he cut out a slice of his leg or something, kind of graphic.
Ooh,
I remember right.
I don't remember that. I do kind of remember a Colossal Boy being in like a weird wheelchair thing, and also that Starfinger was. They had that flashback spotlight on Cosmic Boy's story where they kind of revealed that Cosmic Boy was responsible for leading this guy down the path to becoming Starfinger.
Colossal Boy, right?
That's right, Colossal Boy.
Yeah, they have a confrontation in one of the annuals. Like he's exacting revenge on Colossal Boy, and he badly injures his leg. Has a really great cover anyway. Um, has it like a Brian Boland cover of Colossal Boy and Chameleon Boy, and they're like trapped inside of like some sort of star thing in space.
Yeah, that is cool. I remember
It's
that.
really awesome.
Yeah. Number 5, they're talking about he suggests getting rid of some of the rules, or wonders if they will get rid of some of the rules. Paul says this sort of storyline needs more build up than we could do in a single story, but it might be in the cards for the future. The code against killing, yeah, get rid of that. Let them kill. Bring it on.
Come on. That's in every superhero's code, right?
I mean, the Punisher, I guess, has a code in favor of killing.
Yeah, I mean, these days it's different because it seems like everyone's an anti-hero, but
Yeah.
that's like a fun in the old days, like when I'm showing my kid all these old comics and stuff, and he asks, it always gets back to like the code of not killing. Like with Batman, that's a very central thing, like because he's such a tough and scary guy, but the one thing he doesn't do is the one line he doesn't cross is he doesn't kill anybody.
I wonder if, like, if you were to read those comics to your kid without ever mentioning that code,
Uh-huh.
would your boy be like, how come he doesn't just kill those guys? He should kill them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, it would depend. I mean, it comes up. That would come up like when some of these villains do really, really terrible things, like blow up cities and stuff, right? I don't know. I guess in a lot of the older stories, everyone conveniently, they get out of the plane before it explodes or whatever.
I don't know, the code against killing, like, they just, like, why do you have that code against killing? And I feel like the writers take it for granted that the reader knows that the reason they have a code against killing is that killing is wrong. But they never say that. They just are like, I don't kill people. Some people might kill people, but I don't kill people. But, like, how come you don't kill anybody, Batman? It's like, that's the line I won't cross. But why? Just tell me it's wrong. Just say it. Just come out and say it's wrong to kill people, Batman. But he doesn't do that. It's a code, and he has to follow the rules. And it's in the Legion Constitution, so we don't do it. But why don't you guys do it? Is it right or wrong to kill people? It's in the code. I don't know what my point is.
No, I mean, I think about that a lot. Like with like Superman, it comes up a lot. It's kind of like something Superman and Batman have in common. But with Superman, it really makes sense because it's like he has to have these lines because if he crosses any of them, then he's just like a authoritarian. He's judge, jury, executioner. Maybe that would apply for Batman too, but especially for the most powerful guy on the planet, it's especially important that you have those lines. But I guess it's there, maybe from the comic company's point of view, they feel like it's important that they're saying we're not encouraging vigilantism. These guys are running around, but they're not like shooting people like in Florida.
Uh-huh.
For taking a walk while they're the wrong color.
Oh.
Yeah, in the real world, you never seem to hear about vigilantes unless they're murdering someone.
I mean, they don't really have the comic book kind of vigilantes in real life, but the ones in real life are actually very bad people. Just the one you just used as an example, like, what a piece of shit,
Right, right.
Um,
All those guys down at the border who deputize themselves.
oh, right. Yeah, there's those guys. On to point number 6, when James Ricklefs asks about.
Mordru.
Oh, yeah, he suggests Mordru's first encounter with the Legion as a story possibility. The response is, before Greg LaRocque decided to leave for LSH, the Mordru tale was scheduled for this summer's annual. But with revised scheduling, the artist of choice, Kurt Swan, or had you guessed, became unavailable, and we postponed it until then. Until
It
when?
never happened, right?
No, they didn't ever do that.
Maybe that got folded in because of the Magic War stuff, right? Wasn't Mordru part of that? Mordru part of that?
He was not part of the Magic Wars.
How could that be?
They made you think it was going to be Mordru in the Magic Wars.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't him. But I don't think there was a Mordru annual. I mean, I'm almost sure there was definitely never the first meeting between the Legion and Mordru in an annual.
Yeah, the last one was that one I was just telling you about.
Oh, is that the last one? That's number 5 or number 3?
4.
4. Okay, and then 5 is a reprint annual. It's Tales of the Legion annual number 5. It's a reprint of something.
Oh, they had 5 for Tales?
Yeah.
I think they only had 4 for the Baxter. And 1 and 3 were the Dark Side, Kurt Swan, Keith Giffen, Validus story issues.
On to number 7 about Keith Giffen returning. Keith is back, although that decision happened well after number 45, and with an art style that is neither his old nor new ones. His old one would be like the early 80s Legion, and his new one would be like the 1984 Legion, I guess. It's neither of those, but one we think is very workable for the Legionnaires he loves. We too are excited by his return as co-plotter, and we're glad it took place on another special issue, number 50. I like his art. I'm glad he's back because it seems like his heart's in it more than Levitt's has been.
That or, I don't know. I don't want to take everything away from Paul. I mean, I think they have like a good rapport. They collaborate well. Like maybe he brings the best out of Paul Levitt's.
Yeah.
Readers Roundup. Jim Porter of Decatur, Georgia, asked for Dual Damsel to take part in at least one Legion mission soon. She's such a reliable old gal, and I miss seeing her in action. Consider your wish granted as of this issue, Jim, and we hope you're still on speaking terms with us when you see the result. John Franks of Raleigh, North Carolina, cast a vote for the return of Nardo, the warden of the super stalag of space. He's definitely a bit of trivia from out of the Legionnaires' past, John. Any other readers second the motion or care to vote for their favorite one-shot villain? Who would you vote for, David?
One-shot villains. Mantis Morlo. I don't know anything about him except he has a...
Where's my Legion handbook? my who's who.
He has a cool name.
Did he even make it? Did he make it into the handbook?
Oh, I don't remember. Maybe not in the handbook. I bet he's got a who's who.
That's what I meant. The who's who.
Yeah.
Marvel calls them the handbooks. I get it mixed up sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know what he did. I just remember his name from the cover.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just like a scientist or something. What about you? You like Nardo?
I'm drawing a blank, man. I'm sure there's a dozen that I'd like to see again, but none come to mind.
This Jim Porter guy, I bet he was pretty pissed. I mean, even Paul points it out. It's like, if you're still on speaking terms with me. But yeah, he asked for that reliable old gal, Duo Damsel.
Right.
Bring her back and vaporize her.
If Keith Giffen were answering this, he'd be like, yeah, I'll bring her back for you. Like he would kill her just because this guy asked for it. Asked for her to come back.
Andrew McClaney of Address Not Given. He says, Dear Legionnaires, each of the guest artists on 45 did fine work on their respective chapters, and while it was great to see Swan, Cockrum, Grell, and Giffen take up the Legion again, the nostalgia surrounding their work would have been immeasurably increased if you had reprinted actual panels of their prime Legion art. For instance, Swan's chapter, retelling the death and revival of Lightning Lad, as well done as Swan's work always is, would have had greater impact if you'd reprinted the appropriate portions of Adventure 304 and 312, while the Lucklords commented on the same. May I say a few words of praise for Greg LaRocque?
If you must.
Dan won't allow it. A strip as complex as the Legion with its large cast, exotic aliens, and futuristic settings requires straightforward, clear storytelling to be as comprehensible as possible to the readers. Greg's work is a model of this, and as such adds so much to my enjoyment of this book. Well, he's gone. He quit. The past 30 years have been wonderful indeed, and here's a toast to the next 30. Well, wait. he wants them to put reprints of old panels into these comics or into this issue 45 instead of having these guys draw new stuff or redraw stuff. He would prefer they just like go in with scissors and clip out the panels from Adventure Comics 304 and have Greg Lorock drawings of Luck Lord's comment on that old stuff.
Well, I mean, I love that idea. I've often wondered why they don't do it, but I guess it's impractical, probably.
I think it would be really difficult to, I don't know, just to incorporate that into a new story and use it like,
right.
I don't know.
Well, you know, kind of like the like David Boring.
Yeah.
You know, like the I like that idea, but it's too hard to execute, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be impossible.
Like the panels wouldn't fit well. It'd be the wrong size, or it wouldn't sum it up very well.
Yeah, you couldn't just go 1-to-1. And why not just have, like, they're still around, have them draw some new stuff. Pay Swan to draw some new stuff. I mean, I could see him not liking Swan inked by DeCarlo or something. That makes sense. But what are you going to do?
I know at least one writer who I've talked to, who lives here actually, who talked about wanting to switch styles for flashbacks to like an older JSA character, Wildcat actually. And he wanted the flashbacks drawn and colored in the style of old comics. And at least at the time, his editor wouldn't let him do it. Like it was considered too crappy or cheesy to look like old comics. I think today they'd be okay with that. But
yeah, that sounds really. I mean, that's what Paul Levitz has been doing every time they do a flashback in these comics, and he did it for 20 years or something. That seems really strange. That he must have just had an editor with their head up their ass or something.
Right. I mean, I think what this guy had in mind was maybe a little more blatant, like big dots in the color. You know, make it look really old-fashioned, kind of.
Yeah, I could see that being an uphill battle, trying to find someone capable of making making the big dot color actually work, and who knows what that's supposed to look like. Like they have that Photoshop filter.
Yeah, I use it. It doesn't look right.
Yeah, you have to like really set it up right to make it look right, and the amount of like research you have to do to set it up right. Nobody's going to do that. They're just going to be like, oh, Photoshop will do color halftone. Click. This is what old stuff looks like, you know? And it's like, no, it just looks like garbage. You fucked it up.
Yeah. Did we read the response?
No, you read the response.
Okay. We think the reprints wouldn't have served as well, Andrew, in part because of the mixture of art styles and scenes. For example, the 2 issues you cite were drawn by John Fort and Kurt Swan, whose versions of the Legionnaires were significantly different. I mean, I don't agree with Paul there. I don't think the contrasting styles is a bad thing. And in fact, in this very issue that they're talking about, the style is constantly changing because you have different artists.
Right, that was the point of it.
But I can see what he means about the impracticality of it all.
Yeah, it definitely would not be practical.
This next one comes from David Kaufman from New Orleans. Dear Paul, having read how you've redefined Lightning Lad in 45, okay. Let me come to a conclusion by using this to generalize about your nostalgia stories and what they do. Simply put, your nostalgia stories crystallize your definition of a Legionnaire based on a definition of past history. This focuses or refocuses the Legionnaire's character. Thus, certain types of stories, formatively crucial for the character, can no longer be written, and others must be. All this is done without wrenching a character or the Legion. While this refining to the essence has several obvious advantages, there is one great danger. When you decide to leave the Legion, whoever follows you will not have the freedom with the characters that all the other writers have had, because you will set the Legionnaires. A new writer will have to write his version of the Legion, but not the Legionnaires.
What?
I think I understand. I think I understand what he's saying. I think he's saying by him going in and kind of like doing flashbacks and going into more detail than they did back in the Silver Age, he's reducing the ambiguity. Like, they're not as open to interpretation anymore. They've all got Paul's spin on them. I think that's what he's saying. Like, John Byrne used to be really awful about that. He loved retelling stories so he could put his spin on it. Like, it was his way of slowly, like, micromanaging, like, the Marvel and DC universes. I don't think it's that big of a concern, really, because you can just ignore it if you don't like that interpretation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when these guys, or when Paul like recontextualizes the whatever the unlucky events in Lightning Lad's
Mm-hmm.
life,
Right.
and I don't know, somebody else can do the same thing, right?
Right. Right. And that's what they end up doing.
It's kind of weird that this letter writer Kaufman thinks that when Paul does something like in issue 45 where he rounds up all these pivotal moments of Lightning Lad's life, that that's just like the final say on Lightning Lad.
Right.
When I don't know, like how come did you feel that the final say on Lightning Lad was already said back in whenever the hell, written by Jerry Conway? You know, like
Right.
Paul Levitz did something. You know what I mean?
Right. Even if you, I mean, putting flashbacks aside, like, every writer is going to interpret the characters a little bit differently, or sometimes a lot differently. Like, they're practically different characters, and he's not really taking issue with that.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird. I mean, I can see this happening since Levitz has been writing it so long
Mm-hmm.
that I mean, he's just saying that Levitz is going to be a hard act to follow, I guess. But in all of these kind of comics where it's just like it's been a comic for 500 issues, they've all done this and they'll
Right.
continue to do this and figure it out.
I don't even know if this issue is a great example of it, but for a long time, like, old stories seem to be like sacred or something. You can't really go back and mess with what other people laid down, especially early on in a character's story. Like, there was a fear that the flashbacks would start, like, you're opening the door for like revisionist history, and everybody's gonna like they're gonna fuck up the formula, basically, I guess. And then if you do it, then the next guy is gonna do it, which I think is what he's warning is gonna happen. And the next guy will do it, and they'll keep like increasingly convoluting the history, which I think is what kind of did end up happening with superhero comics eventually. But
Well, yeah, that's what happens and that's what all the fans want to happen, I think. Like they want
maybe.
all those loose ends to be tied up and then have the have those explained and then
Mm-hmm.
have the explanations explained and
Right.
on, you know?
Right. But then I don't really remember anything about this particular issue that was that earth shaking that completely like changed the way I looked at Lightning Lad forever. It doesn't seem like anything really happened. It was just a device to retell his whole story,
Yeah.
right?
And that's like a thing Paul did for all the
Right,
other people, you know?
right,
Like there's a
right.
Star Boy and a Cosmic Boy spotlight.
This isn't like us finding out that way back he died and he was replaced by like a shape shifting pet or something.
Right. Well, see, and that's an example of them having a great time of
Right.
following after Paul, and there is still something you could totally do with this guy.
Right, right.
Paul says, while we've always tried to make our characters flow logically out of their backgrounds, and therefore agree with much of what you said, and in the excised portions of your letter as well, we disagree that future writers will be limited. Each writer of a series, such as the Legion, builds upon whatever's been done before. This writer has used much created by Siegel, Hamilton, and Shooter, and we suspect our successors will alter our work as much as we've changed our predecessors' intent. If nothing else, the changes in our audience make this necessary. That's what we just said.
Yeah. I guess we should have just read the response.
I guess so.
I'm curious about this excised portions of the letter. Like immediately, I'm thinking they'd cut all the profanity and all the name calling out. But probably it was just
More
super
bloviating.
banal. Yeah.
This guy's the letter that was published is just kind of incoherent almost.
Right, right.
Next up, Rob Rudderham from London, England. Dear Paul, my initial reaction to number 45 was one of disappointment. Yeah, me too. That so much of its expanded page length was spent on rehashing already known incidents from Garth's past, but on reflection, maybe as this was all relevant to the central plot and theme, it all hung together nicely after all. Boo, bullshit. I appreciated the concept of the Luck Lords and their behind the scenes pronouncements and manipulations, like the three witches in Macbeth. I also like the way the fate of the universe depended on the outcome of the very personal encounter between a single legionnaire and his arch nemesis. For once, we had no planet-shaking supervillains such as Darkseid, Mordru, or the Time Trapper to contend with, but more was at stake here than perhaps ever before in the Legion's history: the future of life and the universe. The portrayal of Lightning Lord as the maniac, neurotic singleton was the best ever, and the scene of Labyrinth particularly moving and dramatic. The best villains are always those whose motivations and personalities we understand, who are perhaps the dark side of the heroes, or even our own persona. I did think the conclusion was a little bit of a letdown, not so much because of the result as in its execution, which I found rather anticlimactic. I do find this one of your trademarks, Paul.
Me too.
Same here. It must be because you build up plots and dramatic situations so well that I'm always expecting surprise twists at the end. I was hoping to see Rock and Garth join up again. After this story and the change in Garth's luck, surely there could not be a more appropriate time to have all three founders back in the Legion.
Maybe no more appropriate time, Rob, says Paul Levitz. And that's one reason why we resisted the temptation. All three founders may rejoin someday, but we have more stories we want to tell without them, and more suspense we want to maintain about whether or how they will someday return. And also, they just probably had done Legionnaires 3 wasn't that long ago, right? Well, it had come out since this series. It seems like a little soon for another reunion.
Right, they had their own miniseries, and they had an issue in this series where they revisited their first criminal catch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they've gotten some screen time. I mean, I can't remember the ending of this, but if this guy is like, the logic of it is that Cosmic Boy shows up and they team up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like Paul's response. He says maybe there's no more appropriate time, and that's one reason we resisted the temptation. Like, oh, it's too obvious.
See, I can do twist endings,
but it's just a contrarianism. I mean,
not so predictable now, am I?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
like that was a long issue. Just the ending isn't what spoiled it.
Though, I mean, I think, like I said before, I think it would have worked better if maybe it ended with him deciding to be merciful to his brother and try to help him seek help or something, as opposed to just another one of their grudge matches. It seemed very in keeping with previous confrontations. Okay, this next one is by Rex Joyner of Platteville, Wisconsin. Dear people, you should make issues like 45 an annual event. Us old Legion fans know all the history inside and out. The very fact that there is so much history, so much of it critical to understanding what's going on, that potential new fans need a jumping on point. Legion of Superheroes 45 fulfilled that role perfectly, as did the associated issue of Secret Origins. Oh, I forgot about that. Seeing the real Luck Lords was interesting. I'm still wondering where they where they talk out of. Certainly visually impressive beings. Speaking of the Luck Lords, I think they missed the point entirely. They determined long ago that Garth Rands was to be a pivotal figure in the conflict between order and chaos. And since they're chaos oriented and Garth is a force of order, they keep trying to kill him off. Problem is, they're too late. Lightning Lad has already done his bit for the triumph of order. He founded the Legion. Had the attack on Brand been foiled solely by Rockrin and Irma Ardeen, I dare say that the fledgling Legion would not have sufficient glue to stick together during the coming hard times. So even if the Lords of Luck were to succeed in killing off Garth, it would avail them not. The damage is done. The Legion of Superheroes, not Garth Rands, is the mighty force of order that they perceive.
So what's the issue of Secret Origins? I was just looking at those. I can't think of one that kind of ties into.
You're like, do I have that? Do I have two of them?
I do have
Maybe
two
I
of
only have
them.
one.
I have two because I just brought home my batch from my parents' house, and I had doubles of about half of the Secret Origins that the Legion
Right.
comics were in. He says the Legion itself, and not Lightning Lad, is the mighty force of order that they perceive.
I feel like this letter is comparatively straightforward and concise, at least compared to the last couple.
Right. The David Kaufman letter was complicated. I kind of forgot Rob Rudderham's letter. Paul says, referring to the Legion being the mighty force of order, not Garth Rands specifically, Paul says, maybe and maybe not, Rex. It's possible that even though Lightning Lad has formed the Legion, and we agree it probably would not have survived without him in those early days, and gone on to retire from active duty, his moment has not yet come. Maybe the next 30 years will tell the tale.
Not really.
Yeah, does that mean that Paul thought he had more in him? Because he never did. Nothing else ever happened with him, really.
The last big thing I can remember him doing was, at the end.
Right.
When 0 Hour happened.
Yeah, he was just kind of like a rich guy, landowner for all of 5 years later.
Like a plantation owner or something on an asteroid or something.
Yeah.
Where they all hung out naked all the time.
Yeah, except for him. Right. He wore clothes all the time because from the neck down, he is not human, I guess.
Yeah. He's in plasma form.
Yeah.
I mean, but he did. I mean, he raised his kids. That's a big deal. He presumably had a lot to do with helping his brother turn his life around. Not too bad.
Yeah, but the way Paul says this, he's like, I forgot the sentence. He says, it's possible that even though Lightning Lad has formed the Legion and gone on to retire, his moment has not yet come. So he says, it's possible his moment has not yet come.
Right.
I thought he was teasing a future development.
Oh, I
and
see.
That, like, even though he's done these things, retired and whatever, his moment has actually not yet come yet. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying it's possible. Maybe Keith will do something, but I'm not going to do it necessarily.
Of course, Paul's leaving the Legion for the same reason Garth did. Because, well, at least in part, he wanted to spend time with his kids.
Oh, I thought he wanted to have a farm where all the workers are naked.
At this point, he has two jobs, basically. He, he's high. Is he president yet? He's high up at DC. And then he's been doing all his writing, basically, on the weekends and the evenings. And his kids are growing up. He's missing it. So he wants to spend more time with them.
Hey, do you hear that? I think I think I hear the world's smallest violin playing.
Oh my God. Yeah, people that children are sociopaths.
Next month, the trial of
No
Brainiac.
empathy for the world. Go ahead.
Next month, the trial of Brainiac 5 for the murder of Jackson Rugarth, of course, and more of the aftermath of this issue's mega battle, coming in 30 days from Giffen, DiCarlo, and Paul Levitz, of course.
Can you imagine if I sat back and made you read all 2 pages of this?
I would have done it. That would have been fun.
Well, you can read all of Johnny with Johnny DC if you like.
Is there any Legion stuff in that?